Hi there, Grapeshot here with another tier list for combat cards. Today I'm going to be going over a group of cards I call the engagement cards. I think these are generally much more powerful than the cards I previously went over, but they aren't the most powerful classic cards. But yeah, definitely stronger than economy cards, and let's get into it. So, first I've got Quick Teleport. And I think that a lot of people don't actually fully understand these cards. So I'll go a little bit into like what each of them does. So normally when you place a unit on your opponent's flank, like the two sidebars on your opponent's side of the board where you can place units, it takes 10 seconds for that unit to reach their side of the map. And during that time, that unit can't attack and it's a little bit more vulnerable. Um, this is going to reduce that time to 5 seconds. So right off the bat, I'd say this card's effect is not very powerful, right? The majority of the units that you're going to be using to flank are units that are pretty resilient to being attacked. You know, things like crawlers, wasps, sledgehammers, units that take a lot of individual strikes to kill. And they're also going to be units that you're okay with dying because those are positions on the map that are a lot harder to support. And so for that reason, I think spending money on protecting those units doesn't make a lot of sense. But this card is very cheap, right? It only costs 50. So it just is super okay because like 50 gold if it wins you a turn is insanely worth it. So when do I think this card is good? I think it's good when you're playing aggro, right? If you especially if you're playing a strategy where you can attack the opponent's tower from your flank, something like Rhino Wasp, then this card is like a must pick. As a player who does not play very much aggro, I play a lot more mid range. I'm almost never going to be taking this card, right? Because my flanks are consisting of a lot of things like a tank plus a chaff unit or a chaff unit plus a chaff clear unit, where the intention of my flank is to distract units, right? I'm going to be able to distract with or without a quick teleport. And for that reason, I don't pick this card very highly. If you're an aggro player and you're making a lot of cool plays to try and steal your opponent's towers, especially stuff like warp driving a phoenix to take an enemy tower, right? Then this card's going to be very powerful. Inversely, when you see this card be offered, make sure that your flanks are defended enough that you can support them if they get jumped really quickly, right? You might want to start shifting mid-range strategies more into standard strategies and trying to pull your board back a little bit. So, yeah, altogether I think this card is really good and it's really hard for this card to be super punished, but I don't take it at a very high frequency. In fact, I almost never take this, and I would not suggest taking this card unless you are a pretty competent aggro player playing an aggro position. Also, I'd like to say I ranked this card a little lower than I think I would have in other patches because in the current patch, I don't think the aggro strats are as powerful as they used to be with the addition of buildings and the aggro units just being a little less powerful this patch. If aggro became like the meta, I would definitely place this card higher. So with that being said, this card's going to be C tier. Next, advanced missile devices. Yeah, this card's really interesting. Um, Base power, I think, is actually very, very, very high, right? If we do a little bit of math, so a missile sentry does 5,000 damage. This is going to triple that to 15,000 damage, right? That's like a ton of damage. For reference, let's see. I think, yeah, like a level 3 steel ball would be 13,000 health. So even with a defense enhancement, you could one shot a level 3 steel ball with this card. That is crazy value. Like if you can do something like that with this card, you have to. The other thing that you have to really take consideration, and I would say this card is generally going to be a lot worse at the high levels, is it's really, really easy to play around, right? I'm just going to be leading out every single unit I have with crawlers or fangs, and I'm already doing this, but like I'm going to capitalize on it even more and prioritize that super highly if I see an opponent pick up this card. And so for that reason, I think actually getting to use this card's effect is really good. But the things that your opponent does to like protect themselves from this card, let's say they had a steel ball on the line and they have to sell it and redeploy it, or they have to buy missile interception on their saber tits, for example. Those things are all going to be plus EV trades on you. So if you are in a situation where you can use this against your opponent immediately, definitely pick this up, right? I almost never take this card. I think at the higher MMR brackets, you're almost never going to be able to use this to kill something other than a crawler, and it's not going to do very much um, when it does. But if you think you can pull off anything with this card at all, it's so worth doing. So for those reasons, I place this also at C tier. I think definitely don't be afraid to pick this at lower MMRs though. Advanced shield devices. Yeah, this one is crazy good. First of all, what is a shield device? In this context, actually, this is my number one biggest complaint about mechabellum in general, is the terminology energy shield is used willy-nilly. Like if you look at Phantom Ray, it calls the body shield on the Phantom Ray an energy shield, but it's a totally different device that uses entirely different mechanics. This doesn't apply to your Fortress shields. This doesn't apply to your Fang shields. This doesn't even apply to the shield airdrop. This is just the 100 cost, always available shield device that you can purchase. And it's going to increase it from, I think the base health is 40,000. Hmm. I should actually check that. Don't quote me on that. But I think that on average, you're going to be purchasing around 4 of those shield devices per game. So this card is generally going to be worth it. The scenario where this card isn't worth it is when your opponent has a board that's going to be good at popping your shields. Stuff like steel balls, storm crawlers, phantom rays, right? Missiles and lasers. Think, oh, I don't want this card if my opponent has missiles and lasers. Otherwise, it's almost always good, right? It's going to block spells for longer. It's going to be able to counter your opponent's fire plays, your opponent's like oil plays, your opponent's spell plays. This card's just really good. If you're against missile specialists, never pass on this, right? You're just going to be spamming shields. And if this card makes a shield survive 3 turns, that's like a game winning difference. So this is a really powerful card. Understand what it does. It only upgrades your base shields, but that's good enough to be worth picking at the cost of 50. This is just a really good, efficient deal. If you're making your 4 shields you purchase this game 40% stronger for 50 gold, that's a really nice trade. And also, this card can reap immediate benefit. You can just always buy a shield the turn you place this, assuming you're not grabbing it at a time that it's really weak. So for those reasons, this card is going to be A tier. Mobile Beacon. This card does something really unique that none of the other combat cards does, which is it gives you access to a game mechanic that you can already unlock for cheaper than the base unlock cost. Um, Pretty simple why I think this is good. I almost always go Mobile Beacon, and if I'm always going mobile beacon, then getting one for cheaper is just good, right? Also, double mobile beacon, there's a bunch of plays you can make with it, and that's just absolutely fantastic. When do you not want to take this? Um, I think if you're newer to the game or lower MMR, you should just skip on this. It's a little too complex on how to use it well, and it can overwhelm the amount of time you have to make your decisions to add something so complex to your decision making process. Also, I wouldn't take this on a turn where it's going to lose you tempo. It's usually not going to be better than like using an additional deployment, so don't risk losing tempo to taking this card. But it's really strong, so just take this when you can. Mobile Beacon, A tier. That one's pretty simple. Intensive trading. Yeah, this one's really complicated. Um, there is no steadfast rule for evaluating when this card is good. You have to know what units really benefit from levels, and what, like, how much tempo this costs you or gives you. Like, I think a good way to think about this is if I'm losing the game, this is going to be a lot stronger because if I get stuck with no units on my board having levels, then that can be a reason you just get snowballed out of the game. I don't suggest picking this up if you're training specialist or elite specialist. You're going to lose a lot of mobility in what you're playing if you go too tall on your units. By going tall, I mean higher in levels instead of higher in number of deployments. Um, yeah, this card's really medium. I think it's about recognizing the situation to determine whether or not it's good. It combos with enhancement module really well, and so for that reason, it can end up being a lot stronger. And like if you have a unit that has a tech that scales with levels, let's say for example Fortress Shield, this card becomes a lot stronger. So, yeah, this one's pretty hard to evaluate whether or not it's good. I picked this card really highly, and the reason is pretty much just that I think it's a really fun card. And so, for that reason, I'm putting it at B tier. I think putting this at C tier would also be a pretty reasonable evaluation. But hey, high rolling and having fun. Next, we have redeployment. Yeah, this card's really good. This is the one of the cards I don't take enough, and I'm trying to remind myself to pick this card more. It has an effect that works every turn. It's a little bit more expensive than Mobile Beacon, but the effect is stronger. Once again, I wouldn't take this while you're learning the game or lower MMR. You're just not going to use it correctly, and at that point, you'd rather just have more units. I think in recognizing how powerful this is, you have to keep in mind like if you're doing stuff like moving a crawler, you could instead just buy a crawler with this money and have a crawler in both places, which would just be better. So, yeah, you have to be making pretty heads up plays. Similar to Mobile Beacon and Quick Teleport, a lot of these cards actually just perform better when you're playing aggro. I think you need to be prioritizing these like advancement positioning cards a lot higher when you're playing aggro than standard or mid range. And I think also I'd like to say if you're playing Titans, I think this card is much, much better. It pretty much allows you to preserve XP on your Titans while moving them away from things like melting points, etc. Um, which can just be a game winning swing. So I would say take this card pretty highly, but similar to other things, you just have to be really careful of what you're giving up in terms of momentum and deployments, etc. So yeah, also B tier. And that's all we're going to be doing today. All of these cards are really subjective to changes throughout the patches. So you have to maybe with the exclusion of intensive trading, you have to really pay attention to what's the meta, how often am I switching what I'm doing. I think people overpick redeployment when they're stuck in crossfires. It's not really what it's used best for. It's best for like repositioning units against their counters. Um, and yeah, I hope you learned something today. Thanks for watching.